They beat her until she couldn't stand, tied her wrists, chained her to a block, and threw her into the middle of the ocean where the waves would do the rest. No boat, no radio, no chance, just salt, blood, and open water. But what they didn't know, she wasn't just some intel officer, she was a Navy SEAL. And while they sailed off, thinking she'd sink and vanish, she fought through the hypothermia, blood loss, and a 12-foot shark, then came back with the people who owned the sea. The sky was black glass, smeared with stars, and the sea didn't move. Not in any way a person could feel from the steel deck of a cargo ship. But Commander Jordan Drake felt it anyway. She felt it in the roll under her knees, in the salt that clung to her cracked lips, and in the way the air smelled of diesel and something darker. She was on her knees, hands zip-tied behind her back, ankles shackled to a cinder block slick with ocean slime. Barefoot now. One boot had been ripped off in the scuffle. The other lay 10 feet away, useless. They'd spent 2 days trying to break her, asking about routes, schedules, encryption keys, asking who else knew about the shipment. She'd given them nothing. Not her clearance level, not her team designation, not even her middle name. So they'd moved past questions into something darker. Waterboarding in a storage container, stress positions that made her shoulders scream, sleep deprivation while diesel engines roared inches from her head. Still nothing. That's when they decided she was more dangerous alive than useful. Buzzards don't circle water, one of the men muttered behind her. Not a soldier's voice. Contract work, Eastern European accent, pay to do cleanup, not ask questions. Another one lit a cigarette and blew the smoke sideways. She'll be crab meat by dawn. Neither of them used her name. That was the point. Commander Jordan Drake, Naval Intelligence, didn't exist on this boat. Didn't exist on any manifest or any radio frequency or any page a satellite could read. She'd vanished 2 days ago somewhere in the North Arabian Sea, just like they wanted, except they hadn't expected her to still be breathing. "You sure she ain't tagged?" the first one asked. The second man reached down, grabbed her by the jaw, and twisted her face toward the ship's floodlight. Blood smeared down her temple from a cut above her brow. Her left eye was almost swollen shut. He grunted. "She's clean." They hadn't checked her wetsuit liner. Not properly. And even if they had, they wouldn't have known what to look for. The little ridged bump sewn into the seam behind her knee wasn't for comfort. It was a backup blade. Waterproof, ceramic, invisible to metal detectors. But that wouldn't matter if she hit the water wrong. The third man didn't speak at all. He just stepped forward, grabbed the block, and dragged her toward the edge of the deck. Her knees scraped raw over the grating. She didn't fight. Couldn't. Not yet. Eyes half-lidded, chest heaving. She was conserving oxygen, not surrendering. The sea opened up beneath her like a black grave. "Bye-bye, American," the smoker said and kicked the block. She went over without a sound. Water swallowed her whole. The weight dragged her fast, faster than her lungs were ready for. But she didn't panic. She twisted just enough to take the pressure off her ribs and let the block pull her vertical. 10 feet, 20, 30. Light vanished. She opened her eyes, and even in the dark, the muscle memory kicked in. Her fingers moved behind her back, searching for the blade in the seam. Found it. Tilted her wrist, began sawing. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Not even close. Pressure built behind her eyes as the ocean squeezed down. Her lungs burned, ears popped, and a zip tie bit deep into her wrist with every inch the cinder block dragged her. 35 feet, 40. The dark wasn't quiet. It was alive, groaning metal from the freighter Adriatic star above. The screech of bubbles against hull plating. The thump of her own heartbeat climbing into her skull. Jordan didn't waste energy looking up. That instinct got people killed. All she focused on was the serrated ceramic edge pressed awkwardly to the tie between her hands. She could feel her arms going numb, but the blade was sharp. And training didn't vanish just because you were bleeding. DevGru combat divers had a saying. If you can move a finger, you can still cut your way out. She'd heard it in a pool at Fort Lewis. 12 feet deep, blindfolded. A concrete weight looped to her belt. Back then it had sounded dramatic. Now it was doctrine. Her lungs clenched. One more pull. One more scrape. The tie broke. She kicked off the cinder block with both heels and yanked her knees up. The chain toward her ankles as it sank. Blood bloomed. Her body screamed to inhale. She didn't. Jordan kicked again, angled upward, favoring her left side, spinning slightly as the water thinned. Her knife slipped back into its slit. Her fingers instinctively gripped the inside of her belt, where a shallow curve meant flotation sleeve. 5 feet from the surface, her hand found it. She yanked once. Carbon dioxide hissed. Not a life vest, not visible. Just enough buoyancy to keep her above water when the gas hit. She breached the surface like a torpedo, mouth wide, lungs exploding as she finally dragged in air. The sea was vast and merciless in every direction. No lights, no horizon, no ship. It was gone. She treaded water, slow and tight, arms barely moving. Blood from her ankles mixed with the salt stinging deep. One I refused to open, but the other tracked high up where the stars still blinked. She didn't panic. Not now. Panic was for people with options. Instead, Jordan rotated slowly in the water, using the curve of Orion to orient herself south by southwest toward the oil flare she'd seen hours before being captured. Still faintly visible, just a vertical shimmer on the water's edge. The GPS ping should have gone out the moment she planted it on the hull. A sticky beacon, magnetic core rigged to her own fake dead signal. Someone should be listening. If not, then she'd float, burn, and bleed until the ocean took her. But that flare was still blinking. And blinking meant distance, and distance was measurable. Just under 10 nautical miles. If she trusted her angle, she always did. Jordan adjusted the float sleeve under her ribs, stripped the cord from her wetsuit's inner seam, and tied it tight around her thigh, slowing the blood loss. She whispered the first of her Sierra mantras. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think. Then she started paddling. The first 30 minutes were manageable. Each slow stroke pushed Jordan further from where she'd been thrown. Blood from her legs dispersing in a faint trail behind her. The flotation sleeve under her ribs kept her barely above the chop, enough to save strength. She moved with the current, not against it, an old diver's trick. But the temperature was dropping. Her fingers curled slowly without her meaning them to. Her teeth clenched involuntarily. Every now and then, she'd blink at the flare in the distance, still there, still vertical, and mutter. 3 more strokes, then breathe. She was halfway through her 7th interval when her body started doing the math for her. Core temperature dropping, blood loss steady, but not critical. Dehydration setting in despite the flotation, keeping her energy expenditure low. She had maybe 4 hours before hypothermia made the decision for her. Maybe 6 if she was lucky. The flare was still 3 miles out, maybe more. She did the calculation twice, then a third time, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. She kept paddling anyway. Then the water changed. Cool, then colder, then suddenly wrong. There was a stillness beneath her that didn't match the rest of the ocean. She stopped paddling, let herself drift. Silence. A low tug beneath her foot, then a bump. Not a current, not debris. A presence. Jordan turned slowly in the water, hands flat. The left side of her body was half numb, but her eyes were alert now, scanning every faint shimmer under the surface. Then it appeared, 12 feet of muscle and silence. Oceanic whitetip, blunt nose, wide fins. A survivor shark, the kind that hunted shipwrecks and trailed bleeding mammals for hours. It circled her once at a distance, then disappeared. Seconds passed, then it came back closer. Jordan didn't panic, didn't move. She remembered the voice of her seer instructor. Stay vertical. Make eye contact. You're not prey unless you act like it. The shark veered right, then curved back closer again. Jordan unstrapped the dive knife from her thigh. Her hand was stiff, grip weak. She switched to reverse grip and floated taller in the water, kicking once to make herself seem bigger. The shark disappeared again, then shot up fast. Jordan flared her left arm wide, turned just enough to lead it past her. The shark grazed her leg just enough to taste blood. It rolled beneath her and looped around again. She let out a hiss, not fear, timing. She pivoted as it lunged again, this time more direct, more committed. She struck first, knife forward, straight into the gill slit as it passed. The shark thrashed. Its flank collided with her hip. The blade tore free. Salt water filled her mouth as she was shoved half under, but she didn't let go of the knife. She surfaced, coughing hard, chest burning, and faced the direction it had gone. It circled again, slower, then peeled off. The decoy flare she clipped to her belt ignited underwater. Just a flash of light and heat trailing away. The shark followed. Jordan watched the ocean settle, heart pounding. She'd won, not by strength, by discipline. She reset her orientation to the flare and started paddling again. Dawn broke in thin slashes of pale gold smeared across the horizon like someone had torn the sky open with a dull blade. The water shimmered now, deceptively calm, cold in a way that got behind her bones. Jordan squinted into the light, lips cracked, jaw tight. Her breath came in ragged pulls. Stroke, pause, float, repeat. She was beginning to drift west of the flare, current pulling her sideways, but she kept recalibrating. Star to port, wind astern, one eye swollen shut, the other still watching. And then she heard it, a low hum. At first just a ripple under the wind, then thicker, fuller. Rotors. She craned her neck, forcing herself upright against the flotation sleeve. A black dot cut across the sky, silhouetted against the early sun. Not commercial. No contrails. Angular wings. Twin engines. MH-60 are Seahawk, Navy bird. Too high, too fast. Jordan reached for her belt. Her fingers could barely close anymore. Swollen, stinging, white at the knuckles. But she still had her fallback mirror clipped to a retractable cord. She yanked it free, angled it toward the sky, and caught the sun. Flash, pause, flash. 3 seconds. Repeat. She kept flashing. Inside the Seahawk's cockpit, the sensor operator tilted his head. We just passed a glen off the water. 11 o'clock low. The pilot leaned forward. Reflection. Too rhythmic to be wave scatter. Could be a decoy, the crew chief muttered. They've used mirrors on buoys before. Draw us in. No signal buoy in these waters, said the co-pilot. And we got a heat bloom, barely human temp, drifting off thermal scan. The pilot exhaled through his nose. Not a decoy. Decoys don't bleed. He banked the bird hard left, dropping altitude fast. Back on the surface, Jordan was starting to fade. Her shoulders ached like they'd been nailed in place. Her lips moved, but she wasn't saying anything now, just moving breath. She still flashed the mirror, even when she had to rest it against her chest. Then the wind shifted. It hit her like a slap, hard, fast, warm, and dry. Muito vez. She looked up. The MH-60 was circling now, nose tilted, side door open. A diver dropped from the rail like a shadow with fins. Another followed. She let her head fall back and close her eyes. For the first time since they threw her off that boat, she stopped kicking, and the water held her. Hands grabbed her seconds later. Tactical gloves, strong and certain. A voice near her ear shouted over the churned spray. U.S. Navy. You're safe. She opened her eye, whispered one word. Tracked vessel. The diver froze mid-lift. Jordan Drake, he asked. She nodded weakly. Beacon was real. Then her body finally gave out, but not her mind. That part stayed awake, waiting for the next move. Jordan didn't remember the lift. One moment, cold hands braced her neck. The next, the ocean dropped away beneath her, and the wind hit like a wall. Rotor wash blasted seawater across her face as she rose through the spray. Strapped into a rescue sling, body limp, boots trailing, blood dripping steadily from her thigh into the void below. The MH-60 skids caught sunlight just as she cleared the rail. A gloved hand reached out and hauled her in fast but careful. Get her down now. The cabin was hot and loud, voices overlapping, equipment clanking, doors rattling. She hit the deck on a stretcher, and someone immediately pressed a thermal blanket to her chest. Another voice called for vitals. BP's tanking. 82/43. She's freezing from the inside out. Run for saline with heat packs. The medic worked fast, ripping open gauze, cutting through her vest, peeling it back to reveal her torso. Her skin was pale gray, marked with pressure lines from the flotation gear. He tapped her cheek gently. "Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name?" She turned her head barely. Her lips moved. No sound. He leaned closer. "Jordan Drake, Commander." The words came out like air through crushed glass. Another medic leaned in. "We need to divert back. She's not going to make." "No," she croaked. "Turn around." She lifted her hand, slow, shaking, toward the eastern horizon. "Freighter, weapons, hidden manifest. 2 hours max." The cabin fell still. The lead crewman stepped forward. "You have proof. Pinged it before they caught me. Tracking beacon, lower hull, port side." Someone at the sensor station spun his screen. "She's right. We're still getting weak ping telemetry. Drifted a bit, but the signature's stable." The pilot's voice cut in through headset comms. "Say again, what beacon?" "Classified Navy tracker," the sensor operator said. "Passive magnetic, not standard issue." She must have planted it before exfil went bad. Jordan fought to sit up, medic's hand stopping her short. "They think I'm gone. They won't run. If you move now." The crew chief didn't wait. "Give me channel to Seahorse Command. Task Unit 24-5. Tell them we've got a live intel asset in critical condition, requesting intercept authority." The medic pressed a heat pack against her collarbone. "That's not how this works. You need fluids, antibiotics, evac. You're septic." She locked eyes with him. "I said turn the bird." He hesitated, then keyed his mic pilot. "She's echo clearance. We're turning." The helicopter banked hard east, slicing across the waves with sudden purpose. Inside, Jordan closed her eyes, but just for a second. Then she opened them again and reached for the nearest crewman. "Give me a pen." He looked confused. She pointed at the back of her hand. "Rendezvous coordinates. Before I forget." The inside of the Seahawk smelled like heat packs, iodine, and sweat. Jordan was laid out across the port side bench, torso wrapped in compression foil, her line running from her arm to a swaying bag of warm saline. Her right leg was splinted with foam brackets, blood still soaking through the thigh dressing. A medic hovered nearby, adjusting the drip rate every 30 seconds. "Keep her flat," he muttered. "She stands, she crashes." But Jordan wasn't listening. She was watching the sensor feed on the crew chief's tablet. Heat map overlay bouncing slightly with the bird's motion. A blinking red dot sat inside the shadow of a container ship hull. Static telemetry signal. Weak but steady. "That's the ping." Her ping. "You're tracking it live?" she asked, voice through cracked lips. The crew chief nodded. "Barely. Looks like a modified freighter. No call sign, no cargo log, no transponder. Might be flagged as medical aid transport." Jordan coughed once, winced. "They're using it to smuggle weapons. American pattern crates. Navy surplus. I saw serial scratched off." The pilot's voice cut in over internal comms. "We're rerouting south by southeast. 2 hours to intercept. No rules of engagement issued." "Then get them issued," Jordan said. "This isn't a suspicion. This is evidence." The crew looked at each other, then at her. "You're not just an analyst, are you?" one asked. "Naval Intelligence Liaison, DevGru affiliate, Echo 6 clearance." She didn't blink. "That gives me temporary field authority when transmission is compromised." The comm specialist relayed the request to Joint Command. Jordan kept speaking, now to the pilot directly. "Tell them the beacon's on the port side hull, just below waterline. And if it stops transmitting, the ship submerged the device." "That's your kill switch." "You really planted it?" the medic asked. "Even after they caught you." "I planted it because they caught me." She reached for the medic's pen in the back of her own hand. Scribbled fast, numbers overlapping. "Rendezvous coordinates," she said. "They're heading for a private dock in Berbera. Security is mercenary run. If you wait until they dock, they'll offload before we can build probable cause. Then we intercept en route." "No," she said. "You don't intercept. You follow until backup arrives. If they divert course or drop anchor, I'll confirm the dock pattern." The comms officer turned from his headset. "Command says standby. They're looping in a submersible unit for Black Ops intercept. Closest naval asset is already submerged. USS Michigan. They're an hour from reposition." Jordan sat up slowly, vision swimming. I'm going on that sub. You're barely alive, the medic snapped. She met his eyes. Then you better keep me that way. The USS Michigan surfaced under moonlight, barely breaking the skin of the ocean. From above, it looked like a shadow trying to breathe. Silent, predatory, sleek as a whale with purpose. The Seahawk circled once, then hovered low. Rotor wash rippled the surface in concentric waves as a stretcher line lowered from the side hatch. Jordan Drake came down slow, not like cargo like authority. Two SEALs in black dry suits met her on the midship deck. No words, just nods and firm grips. They moved her below decks through a narrow hatch, down a ladder, and into the glowing heartbeat of the sub. The control room was low-ceiling and warm, lined with green-lit consoles and personnel wearing headsets and calm faces. A junior officer handed her a towel and a packet of electrolyte paste. She ripped it open and swallowed without blinking. "Ma'am," the XO began. "We were briefed en route. You got the ping data and target telemetry live," she rasped, tapping the tablet. Freighters rerouting slightly west by 3 degrees, still holding course toward Berbera, but skirting the original shipping lane. "Someone's tipped them off." "Wasn't us," the SEAL team leader said, stepping forward. He was stocky, close-cropped, eyes like flint. "Commander Barnes, Task Unit 24. We've got 6 men, full SDV capability, and 2 underwater ingress options." "You've run this route before," Jordan asked. 3 times. "Somali coast is loose netting. Ports leak. What do you need?" She didn't hesitate. "SDV insert at 1.5 nautical. East approach. They'll expect boarding from starboard if they spot us." "You're riding in?" he asked, a trace of disbelief. She nodded. "I planted the beacon. I have visual layout. They move containers to block upper access decks. I can walk you through that blind." The commander looked at the medic beside her. "She'll hold," the medic said, "but not for long." Jordan glanced around the planning table. A 3-dimensional topo overlay of the freighter hovered above a projector pad. Red squares marked containers. A yellow dot pulsed low near the hull. "They've got about 90 minutes before landfall. After that, it's deniable cargo, washed, buried, sold to people who don't file receipts. And we got one shot," Barnes muttered. Jordan reached for the digital stylus and marked 3 red X marks on the schematic. "Entry ladders here. Dry access to interrogation hold here. Hostiles typically sleep forward compartments. Weapons cache mid-deck. Take them quiet. We only get 1 clean hit." One of the SEALs spoke up. "How many hostiles we looking at?" "Confirmed 8 during my detention. Could be 10 now if they rotated crew at the last port. Most are contractors. Balkan, maybe Russian, former military, but sloppy. They rely on isolation, not training." She zoomed in on the engine room. "Their weak point is here. Novakub generator. You cut main power, they're blind and deaf for 45 seconds before the emergency kicks in. That's your window." Barnes studied her face. "You counted seconds while they were beating you." "I counted everything." A junior tech passed her a comms earpiece. "Encrypted channel. You'll be Vulture 6 for the operation." Jordan clipped it on. "It fits." Barnes gave her a look. "You don't owe them this." She met his gaze, eyes like broken glass, soldered back together. "They threw me into the ocean," she said. "Now I'm bringing the tide." The water swallowed them without a sound. Twin SDVs, sealed delivery vehicles, slipped out from the dorsal hatch of the USS Michigan like shadows detaching from a larger one. Low profile, battery silent, barely visible even on infrared. Each held 3 men and 1 mission. Jordan was crammed in the rear hull of the lead SDV, chest pressed to her knees, comm snug under her hood, rifle secured across her lap. Her body hurt like fire wrapped in ice, but her hands were steady. 60 meters to intercept point came Barnes' voice over comms. "No sonar pings." Freighters running blind. She blinked, her eyes open inside the mask. The viewport showed almost nothing, just bioluminescent flecks and the faint pulse of the beacon she'd planted, now glowing like a heartbeat in the dark. Her beacon. She keyed her mic port-side intake vents, midline hull seam. "They lead to ballast compartments, unlocked from inside last I saw." The SDV angled up, arcing silently toward the underside of the freighter, now looming above them like a blackened wall. "Roger," Barnes said, stacking left. The seals detached first, for frogmen disappearing upward like ghosts. Jordan followed slower, her body protesting every kick, but she kept going. She reached the vent grill and felt for the latch. A manual lever behind a rusted panel, still loose, still unchained. She popped it. Water surged past her as she squeezed through the narrow duct, elbows and knees scraping rusted bolts. Inside the ballast cavity, it was quiet again. Dead metal, stale water, the soft chime of her breathing in the mask. The seals regrouped. No words. They moved like one organism, over around, through narrow channels until they reached the internal maintenance ladder. Jordan signaled once and started climbing. Above them, the hatch to the engine room loomed. She placed her hand on the latch, counted to 5, then turned. The metal lifted with a soft gasp. They emerged into heat and noise. Thrum of diesel, rattle of a misaligned fan belt. No footsteps, no alarm. Jordan pointed to the blind corner behind the backup generator. Barnes moved. His team followed. 2 guards on rotation, she whispered. Usually sleep between shifts. Their cabins through that bulkhead. Far side of the galley. He nodded, tapped his wrist. 30 minutes until dock. They moved past stacked crates with falsified medical labels, past pallets of grain sacks hiding steel ammunition tubes. Every twist matched what she remembered. Every corner she'd once been dragged around was now approached on her terms. Then they reached the stairwell to the upper deck. Jordan took point. Not fast, not loud, just steady. They were inside now. Past steel, past noise, past excuses. And there were men above who still thought she was dead. She tapped her mic. Vulture 6 in position. Permission to breach. Barnes' voice came back without hesitation. Breach granted. And just like that, the hunted became the hunter. The stairwell groaned as they climbed, slow, precise, 2 boots per step. Above, the steel door to the main deck rattled lightly in the wind. The ship was moving fast now, churning toward its fake port manifest like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong. Jordan pressed herself against the bulkhead beside the door and tapped twice on her comms. Alpha Team, breaching starboard. Bravo, hold for perimeter sweep. Confirm cargo integrity. Live rounds only if engaged. Vulture 6, Barnes' voice replied. Alpha stacked. Go in 3. She counted in her head. The door blew inward. Seals surged through like a tide. Suppressed bursts. Sharp commands. No screams. The first 2 guards dropped before they could even lift their weapons. Another one tried to run, straight into Bravo's suppressive fire from the upper ladder. Clean fast. Jordan stepped onto the deck behind them, rifle angled low, but ready. Her right leg throbbed with every step, but she didn't limp. Not for this. The freighter's bridge came into view. A rusted tower with frosted glass. 2 shadows moved behind the console. One ran, one didn't. I want the bridge. Don't fire unless fired on. Barnes nodded once and peeled off. His team took the hold. Jordan walked forward alone, weapon tucked tight to her shoulder, wind clawing at her hood. The door was already cracked open. She stepped through it, and there he was. The same contractor who'd spit on her boots, who had ordered the block chained to her ankles. Same face. Same smugness. Only now it cracked. You, he stammered. She didn't aim, didn't speak. She just looked at him. He reached for the console. Maybe a panic button. Maybe nothing. She was faster. A boot to the wrist, then the muzzle of her rifle against his chest. I told them not to shoot you, she said, voice low, words barely carrying over the hum of the ship. His mouth worked like he wanted to beg. She lowered the weapon slightly, just enough for him to think he had room to talk. Then she cuffed him. Hard plastic zip tie. No ceremony. You should have shot me, she said. He didn't reply. Didn't even look at her, but she saw it. The tremor in his fingers, the tiny shiver in his jaw, the understanding. Outside, the seals moved like a machine, bagging crates, cataloging drives, securing the helipad for extract. The sun breached the ocean's edge, and Jordan Drake stood on a ship they tried to erase her from. Barnes climbed the bridge steps, nodded once. What's the call? She looked out over the sea, wind in her face, blood still dried to her temple. Sail it home. She forced the contractor into a chair, tied his ankles to the base. You should have shot me, she said. He didn't reply. Didn't even look at her, but she saw it. The tremor in his fingers, the tiny shiver in his jaw, the understanding. Outside, the SEALs moved like a machine, bagging crates, cataloging drives, securing the helipad for extract. The sun breached the ocean's edge, and Jordan Drake stood on a ship they tried to erase her from. Barnes climbed the bridge steps, not at once. What's the call? She looked out over the North Arabian Sea, wind in her dark brown hair, dried blood on her temple. Sail it home. The Adriatic star that had been her prison was now evidence. Victor Hayes sat zip-tied in the chair where he'd once given orders. The manifest scanner Barnes brought up confirmed what Jordan already knew. American weapons, serial numbers filed off, headed for buyers who didn't exist on any government list. You know what happens now, Jordan said to Hayes, still not looking at him. You'll be processed through naval intelligence. Every name you give shortens your sentence. Every lie adds years. He finally spoke, voice hoarse. I was just doing a job. She turned then, gray-green, eyes meeting his. So was I. The difference is I finished mine. The extraction helicopter arrived within the hour, a second Seahawk dispatched from the nearest carrier group. Medical personnel rushed to assess Jordan's condition while the SEAL team continued securing the vessel. A skeleton crew from the USS Michigan would sail the freighter to the nearest Allied port under armed escort. Commander Drake, the senior medical officer, said as he examined her injuries, "You need immediate surgical intervention. That leg wound is infected, you've lost significant blood, and your core temperature is still dangerously low." She nodded slowly. After we secure the cargo manifest, and I debrief command. He started to protest, but Barnes cut him off. She's been running on fumes and willpower for 16 hours. Another 2 won't kill her. But make it fast, Commander. Your body's got limits, even if your mind doesn't. Jordan sat in the bridge as the sun climbed higher, dictating her report into an encrypted recorder. Every detail from the initial capture to the beacon placement, from the torture sessions to the names and faces she'd memorized, from the ocean drop to the shark encounter. Her voice remained steady throughout, clinical and precise. Even when describing the moment, they kicked the concrete block over the rail. This is what SEALs did. They completed the mission, then dealt with the aftermath. Barnes entered carrying 2 bottles of water and a ration pack. Eat. That's an order. She accepted both, realizing she hadn't consumed anything but electrolyte paste in 3 days. As she ate, Barnes sat across from her. That beacon you planted, how do you know we'd find it? I didn't, she admitted. But I knew if anyone was listening, they'd recognize the signature. It was programmed with my personal identifier code. Dead man switch that only activates if my vitals flatline for more than 60 seconds. Smart, he said. Desperate, she corrected. Smart and desperate aren't mutually exclusive. He watched her for a moment. You know, most people in your position would have accepted rescue and called it a win. Coming back for the ship, leading the assault while half dead. That's something else entirely. She met his gaze. They didn't just try to kill me, Commander. They tried to erase me. Make me disappear like I never existed, like my mission never mattered. I couldn't let them win. The radio crackled. Extraction bird inbound, 5 minutes. Jordan stood, wincing as weight hit her injured leg. Time to go home. She took one last look at the bridge, at Hayes still sitting with his head down, at the vast ocean beyond where she'd fought for survival. The water had tried to claim her. The contractors had tried to drown her. But she was Navy SEAL, and SEALs own the water. The helicopter lifted off from the freighter's deck, carrying Jordan away from the ship that had been both her prison and her proving ground. Through the open door, she watched the Adriatic star grow smaller, SEALs still visible as tiny figures moving across the deck. The North Arabian Sea sparkled beneath them, beautiful and deadly. The same water that had nearly claimed her now, just another battlefield she'd survived. Commander Barnes sat across from her, checking his gear with practiced efficiency. You'll be debriefed by naval intelligence within 12 hours. They'll want everything. Names, faces, operational details. Standard protocol for compromised missions. She nodded. I've been through it before. Never after being executed, though, he said with a slight smile. That's a new one for the after-action report. The medical officer worked on her leg during the flight, cleaning the wound properly for the first time, administering antibiotics through her foreline. You're lucky, he said. Another 6 hours, and this infection would have been systemic. You'd be looking at amputation. She didn't respond, just watched the ocean pass below. Luck had nothing to do with it. Training, preparation, and sheer refusal to die. Those were what saved her. Luck was for people who left things to chance. Fort Lewis Naval Hospital appeared on the horizon, a sprawling complex near Seattle where specialists waited to treat injuries most civilians couldn't imagine. The Seahawk descended onto the helipad where a full trauma team stood ready with a gurney. Jordan waved them off. I can walk. Commander Drake, the lead surgeon, said firmly, you've been through severe physical trauma. Let's do our jobs. She compromised, accepting the wheelchair they offered, but refusing the gurney. As they wheeled her through the corridors, sailors and officers stopped to watch. Word had already spread through unofficial channels. The SEAL who'd been thrown overboard and came back with a strike team. The woman who survived execution and turned it into a mission success. She could feel their stares, some admiring, some skeptical, all curious. In the examination room, doctors cataloged her injuries with clinical precision. Severe concussion, fractured ribs, deep lacerations, hypothermia damage, infection, malnutrition, dehydration. The list went on. How are you even conscious? One young resident asked. Training, Jordan replied simply. They teach you to function through pain, to compartmentalize, to keep the mission first and worry about your body later. The senior surgeon shook his head. Well, the mission's over now, Commander. Time to let your body catch up. They admitted her for a minimum 72-hour observation, though everyone knew it would be longer. Her first visitor arrived that evening. Captain Turner, her commanding officer, entered with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. Commander Drake, he said, taking a seat beside her bed. Hell of a thing you pulled off out there. She managed a weak smile. Just doing my job, sir. Your job was intelligence gathering. You went significantly beyond scope. She met his eyes. They tried to erase the mission, sir. I couldn't let that happen. The weapons, the trafficking network, the evidence. It was all going to disappear. Turner nodded slowly. The beacon was brilliant. Planting it while captured, programming it with your personal code. Naval intelligence is already calling it textbook contingency planning. It was desperation, sir. Sometimes desperation and brilliance look the same, he replied. You'll be recommended for commendation. Silver Star at minimum, possibly Navy Cross, depending on how the review board sees it. She shifted uncomfortably. I'd rather just get back to work, sir. He smiled slightly. That'll be a while, Commander. You've got months of physical therapy ahead. But when you're ready, there's a training position waiting. Seems a lot of people want to learn from the SEAL who own the ocean. 3 weeks later, Jordan sat in a secure briefing room at Naval Intelligence Headquarters, her legs still in a walking brace, but healing steadily. The debrief had taken days, every detail examined and cross-referenced. Victor Hayes and his crew were in custody, facing charges that would keep them imprisoned for decades. The weapons trafficking network they'd uncovered stretched across 3 continents, and Jordan's intelligence was dismantling it piece by piece. The analysis officer reviewing her case looked up from his tablet. Commander, your beacon placement was extraordinary. You managed to attach a tracking device to a moving vessel while under hostile observation, program it with fail-safe protocols, and ensure it would only activate under specific conditions. That's beyond standard operating procedure. She shrugged slightly. I knew if they caught me, the mission would fail unless I had insurance. The beacon was the insurance. But you didn't know if anyone would find it, he pressed. You were thrown into open ocean with almost no chance of survival. The statistical probability of rescue was less than 5%. She met his gaze steadily. 5% is better than 0. And SEALs are trained to operate in the margins where other people see impossible odds. We're taught that giving up is the only real failure. Everything else is just another problem to solve. The officer made notes. Your testimony has been invaluable. The contractors are cooperating now, providing names and locations. We've already seized 2 more shipments and arrested 15 additional suspects. This network won't recover. Good, Jordan said simply. That's what made it worth it. Not the survival, not the rescue, but knowing the mission succeeded. That's what we're here for. Commander Barnes visited her that afternoon, finding her in the physical therapy room working through painful range of motion exercises. You're pushing too hard, he observed. You always push too hard, or just hard enough. She paused, breathing heavily. Both. He sat on the bench beside her. The team wanted me to tell you something. You're welcome back with Task Unit 24 anytime. We could use someone with your particular skill set. She smiled. Particular skill set. That's a polite way of saying stubborn and hard to kill. That too, he admitted with a grin. But also tactically brilliant, calm under pressure, and willing to make the hard calls. Those are rare qualities. She resumed her exercises. I appreciate it, Commander. But I think my days of underwater insertions might be behind me for a while. The ocean and I need some time apart. Fair enough, he said. But the offer stands. SEALs take care of their own, and you proved you're one of us when you refused to quit. That evening, alone in her hospital room, Jordan stood at the window, looking out over Puget Sound. The water stretched to the horizon, dark and endless, the same element that had nearly killed her. But she felt no fear looking at it now, only a strange sense of peace. She'd been thrown into the ocean to die. Instead, she'd survived, completed her mission, and brought justice to those who'd tried to erase her. The doctor said she'd carry scars from the experience, physical and mental. The leg wound would ache in cold weather. The concussion might cause occasional headaches. The psychological trauma of torture and near death would require processing. But Jordan knew she'd carry something else too. The unshakable certainty that she could survive anything, that no situation was truly hopeless, that training and determination could overcome odds that would break most people. Her phone buzzed with a message from Captain Turner. Medal ceremony scheduled for next month. Navy Cross approved. You've earned it, Commander. She set the phone down without responding immediately. The medal was nice validation from the institution she served. But the real reward was simpler. She'd been tested at the absolute limit of human endurance and hadn't broken. She'd faced execution and turned it into victory. She'd proven that SEALs truly did own the water, even when that water tried to claim them. 6 months after the incident, Commander Jordan Drake stood on the deck of a training vessel off the coast of Washington State, watching a new class of naval intelligence officers go through water survival exercises. Her leg had healed, leaving only a faint scar and the occasional ache she'd learned to ignore. The concussion symptoms had faded. The nightmares came less frequently now, though she still sometimes woke gasping, feeling phantom water closing over her head. Captain Turner had been right about the training position. Naval Special Warfare Command wanted her expertise available to the next generation. Not just her technical knowledge, but her experience surviving the unsurvivable. She'd become a living case study in contingency planning, in refusing to accept defeat, in turning disaster into mission success. The young officer approaching her now had that mixture of respect and nervousness she'd grown accustomed to seeing. Commander Drake, he said formally, I am Lieutenant Masson. I wanted to ask about the beacon protocol you developed. How did you know it would work under those conditions? She smiled slightly. I didn't know. I hoped. But hope isn't a plan, so I built redundancy into every step. Multiple fail-safes, passive activation, personal identifier coding. I planned for the worst-case scenario and then imagined something even worse. The lieutenant nodded, taking notes. And when they threw you overboard, how did you maintain focus? She looked out at the gray water, remembering that night. Training, she said simply. Thousands of hours of training so that when your conscious mind is screaming in panic, your body knows what to do automatically. You can't think your way through drowning. You have to train until survival becomes instinct. She watched the students in the water below, struggling with their exercises in controlled conditions with safety divers nearby. They looked cold and miserable, convinced they were enduring something difficult. They had no idea what true difficulty looked like. But that was okay. Most of them would never face execution in open ocean. Her job was to prepare them just in case they did. Commander Barnes appeared beside her, having flown in to observe the training. "Heard you turned down the promotion," he said casually. Jordan nodded. "I'm more useful here, teaching people to survive, to think tactically even in crisis. That matters more than another stripe." He smiled, still stubborn, still making the hard calls for the right reasons. "The story's gotten around, you know. They're calling you the SEAL who came back from the dead." She grimaced. "I hate that. I didn't die. I just refused to. There's a difference." Fair point, he conceded. But the legend's already written. Woman gets thrown in the ocean by arms dealers, fights off a shark, gets rescued, then leads the assault team back to capture the ship. That's the kind of story that defines a career. She turned to face him directly. "Then let it define the right things. Not that I'm special or superhuman, but that training works. That preparation matters. That giving up is a choice, and you can choose differently." Barnes nodded slowly. "That's why you're good at this. You don't glorify it. You make it practical." She looked back at the water, at the students still struggling below. Survival isn't about being a hero. It's about being thorough, being prepared, and being too stubborn to quit. Those are skills anyone can develop. The question is whether they're willing to put in the work before they need them. The sun broke through the clouds, casting light across the gray water. Jordan thought about that night 6 months ago, about the cold and the darkness and the certainty of death. She thought about the ceramic blade hidden in her wetsuit, about the beacon she'd planted, about every small decision that had kept her alive. She thought about Victor Hayes sitting zip-tied in the bridge, about sailing the Adriatic Star home as evidence, about proving that the people who tried to erase her had failed completely. Could you survive being thrown into the open ocean, bleeding, with a shark circling beneath you? She asked the assembled students below during the debrief. Would you still have the strength to lead a strike against the very people who left you to die? Let me tell you something. You already have that strength. You just need to forge it through preparation, through training, through refusing to accept that any situation is truly hopeless. That's what SEALs do. That's what we teach. And that's why we own the water.